Welcome to Bridge to Local with Affinity Group, the podcast that connects manufacturers to local operators. With deep industry experience and a proven track record of successful partnerships, Affinity Group is your bridge to driving growth and seizing opportunities in food service. Let's build success together, one connection at a time.
Welcome to Affinity Group's Your Bridge to Local. I'm your host, Mindy Kopaz. Walk into any kitchen or dining hall and you'll find people of all backgrounds, identities, and experiences working together to keep America fed. But here's the thing. The higher you climb the leadership ladder, the more the diversity begins to fade. According to a recent National Restaurant Association study, they found that while nearly 70% of mid-level restaurant workers are women, just 38% of executives are. And among the top 50 restaurant chains, only 5 CEOs are women. Today, we're going to talk about why that is, and more importantly, what we can do about it. I'm joined by an awesome panel of powerhouse women. We'll dig into career journeys, industry barriers, and what progress looks like. Most importantly, how we can all play a role in building a more inclusive food service future. It's not just about representation. It's about transformation. And it can start with stories like these. Let's get into it and introduce our panel.
Hi, Amy Gerard from Edward Don & Company. I oversee all corporate marketing. We are the world's leading distributor of food service equipment and supplies.
Hi, I'm Nicole Stroman. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for Basic American Foods, and we are leading supplier and manufacturer of dehydrated beans and potatoes.
Hello, everyone. Morgan Abba. I'm with Griffith Foods. I lead our quick service restaurant division in sales for the U.S. And Griffith, in blending care and creativity to nourish the world, sells coatings, sauces, dressings, marinades, and seasonings.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to talk about women in our industry, women for our industry. How do we find them? How do we keep them? How do we grow them? So we're just going to dive right in. Let's talk a little bit about how we all got here. So my path into food service was interesting. I started as an elementary school teacher and kind of stumbled my way into the industry that I didn't really know existed until, as an ex-teacher, I was looking at becoming a trainer or using those skills, and I answered a newspaper ad, and that's kind of how I got here. How did you all find your way into food service?
So I can start. I have a bit of a unique story into food service. It actually goes back to my dad, who was a plant manager at a cheese company. And so at 6 years old, I was introduced to food products that he was very proudly manufacturing for customers like McDonald's and Subway and the like. So I think for me, I had this early exposure to, what it looks like. That's back in the day, you could go into a cheese plant, right? Like they didn't have the rules that they have now. But early exposure to understanding kind of how food was made and how it landed at, our favorite restaurants that we would go to as kids. And so from there, he had kind of worked his way into the corporate side of the business and into the executive team. And so when I was in college, he had suggested, kindly nudged like, hey, how about considering an internship? And so, I was a marketing major and saw myself going into, an ad firm or working at a large book company. And I have all these crazy aspirations. But I actually interned for the cheese company for 3 summers and kind of got a taste for like the selling aspect, went to my first food show before I graduated, really got to see the dynamic of the industry and kind of fell in love with it pretty quickly and just, had that real life experience of what it looks like to be part of the industry. And so when I had a chance to join the company fresh out of college, started as a business sales manager, carrying a bag, calling on 26 U.S. food service distributor centers. So that was my start, kind of a crazy way to get introduced to the industry. Morgan, what about you?
A bit of a funny story as well. I was a college basketball player, and every waking moment we had, summers, evenings, weekends, all throughout the day, we were in the gym. So as I was nearing graduation, My work experience resume read very light. And I recall our assistant athletic director at the time, Jeannie Stengel, was connected to a total rock star at the same cheese company that Nicole is just referencing and said, I'm going to help you. Let's get you an interview. And I said, absolutely not. I said, I do not want to go into sales, and I certainly don't want to sell cheese, so thanks, but no thanks. And she reminded me about said light resume and said, take the interview for some interview experience. And so my first ever job interview was 8 hours of 8 one-hour interviews with different folks throughout the organization, and sitting, learning from them and hearing the passion that they had for how people were choosing to feed their families and the products of which they had on shelves and in restaurants, and creating memories and moments at holiday tables. It was so abundantly clear to me that the passion they had went so far beyond cheese, and I never looked back.
Awesome. Amy, how about you?
Sure. I think I have an interesting story as well. So my entire life, I grew up skating competitively, figure skating. And out of college, on a fluke, ended up skating with Ice Capades and other professional companies around the world. So when I retired from that, I was going to go back to grad school. In the meantime, a girlfriend called me and said, hey, I'm looking for some part-time help in marketing, which is my background from college. And are you interested? I'm like, well, yeah, why not? Ended up at a company called Sterno. At the time, it's now been sold, but Sterno's a household brand name, as we all know. So started there part-time. Ended up loving it, loving the dynamics, loving the people. Ended up going, they threw me in brand marketing as an assistant and hired me full-time at the end of that summer, I believe. And first NRA show, they were flying me around the country to American Tasting Institute, all these catering shows. And I fell in love with the people, the process. People are happy around food, and they're happy around beverages and all the catering and just the industry itself, the people. And back then, I'm dating myself, there weren't a lot of women in marketing or in the, executive roles. But, where I sit today, it's been great to see women really grow up into the industry. But the industry is, we were talking earlier, once you get in, it's hard to get out. And I think it's the people and it's the passion. And, that's what's kept me for all these years.
I think, too, like our examples, none of it came together through sort of a traditional job search, right? Like exposure at a young age, had a connection, right? Morgan, for you to a cheese company, you kind of stumbled into the manufacturing or equipment side of things, right? And it's interesting it wasn't through a traditional job fair or, some of the routes that maybe we hear more about. So it's just a good reminder of, opportunity comes sort of when you least expect it. And the food industry touches so many different pockets that, it's just neat to hear others' stories.
I love that because my mom was a college professor, 2 masters, doctor, she's school driven. So we grew up, you're going to school regardless. She always said to us kids, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And when I just listening to our intro into the industry, it's all about who we knew being at the right time at the right place. I didn't even know the food service industry existed until I had gotten into it. So I'm a firm believer. It's like network, get to know people. It doesn't matter what role they're in, what department, I always say to, my team, get to know everyone in the company, get to know your team, ask a lot of questions.
So much of this business is relationship driven. It's less about not that the products aren't important, but sometimes it's less about the products and more about the connections that you bring and the solutions that you provide and your ability to navigate and troubleshoot and problem solve. On our side, on the agency side, we're called to do that on a daily basis, right? From all of our industry partners. Operators are looking for solutions. Manufacturers are looking to address challenges. Distributors are looking to solve problems. Like, you have to be nimble. And I think it sounds like from our stories, people can recognize the ability and the traits that are inherent to make you successful in this industry even though you might not have industry experience, you can get coached up on that, right? We can teach you that, but you have to be able to handle a lot in a rapidly changing environment that never truly slows down at all. So,
Well, food is emotional, right? So I think
Absolutely.
you have such an attachment to the way you're feeding your family or the things that you're putting on your table or talking about or your first dates or, you were mentioning catering and weddings and special events. And it's no surprise. It's funny that we had two marketing people. I was a public relations, and just the ability to tell a story and to create moments and to own something that's maybe not as definable. And I think it makes sense that that would wind itself into this industry.
it's true. It's what keeps people coming back, I think, is that it's never going away, right? We celebrate all of the milestones of life with families, with groups of friends, with colleagues, right? It's retirement parties, it's funerals, which is a sadder milestone, but weddings, communions, whatever the situation is, people celebrate with and around food and create that experience. And so part of, like, when we talk about attracting talent to the industry, it's less about the cheese, right? I don't want to make cheese or work for a cheese company, no offense, but I do want to be a part of those celebrations in life. I do want to help enable people to celebrate special moments. So that's something I think the industry can do a better job of, or we need to continue beating the drum of, because it is what resonates. It is what is the purpose of this whole wheel, right? This whole mechanism that we're on.
Yeah, it's such a ecosystem of different partnerships and different relationships and systems that come together to create the menu experience, right? So, I mean, you think about the frontline teams in the restaurants and how critical that work is. And you think about the frontline teams in the manufacturing plants or the assembly plants, how critical that is. You've got those that are developing the brand strategy and creating brand awareness and doing the research and taking the data and making the insights, right? Like, you've got all these different pockets that I just wonder, as a 20-year-old, right, or a 23-year-old being, graduating, how do we help bring that to life? Like, the opportunity that the industry has available, and that really there's a fit or a career path for almost anybody that wants to really get involved in and learn about just the whole process of menu development and ultimately the landing in whatever's your handheld or your meal. There's so many things that are part of that.
And I think part of that is connecting this food service industry to the aspirations that those 23-year-olds might have. And Amy, when you were talking about your mom as a college professor, we have that in common. Both my parents were as well. And I had this moment of, after a few years of selling food, wondering, how do you have that same impact 30 years down the road and what your legacy is? My parents have students they can point to and speak to and all these things. But I think everything that you're touching on, that we're speaking about, in that the purpose of your career is to impact people and to change the world and their lives and to better the communities around you. And everyone eats every day. Right. And you create moments every single day. And there are so many people, to your point, Nicole, that are touching this from the beginning until the end of the process, that those are your students, right? I mean, those are the people that you're impacting every single day. That's the purpose of your career. That's what should inspire you. I think it's probably what helps us get out of bed every single morning. And so I would hope that those college seniors think through that, or have some sort of light to what that path looks like in the food service space.
And it's interesting because I look at my mentors through my journey. I've had amazing mentors, women, men, colleagues. And when I started at Sterno on a fluke, part-time, there's a group of us, 9 ladies. We still get together, like, almost, if not every quarter. There's a couple of us get together like every month. And we've built this friendship. And I'll tell you, when, the networking is, we are all, hey, we've got this job opening. Do you know someone? We're all connecting because we're all in the industry still at some facet. When we left Sterno, some went to food, some went to, a supplier, some are on the sales side. And we've connected. And that's why I say, making connections. And as the younger people come in, it's like, I've got someone that's younger on my team. And I'm always like, I want to introduce you to so-and-so. I want you to get to know the face with the name. We're in marketing, so we are the brand ambassadors for our business, internally, externally, with our suppliers, with our customers. And to me, touching on both what you said, it's that networking and making sure you feel part of whatever that community is that you're in. And I just keep going back to the industry. So it just sucks you in. It's around food. It's around, beverages. You think about these mixologists that you may be working with. I've worked with mixologists, with chefs, and, we're everything but the food. But your people with the food or the beverages makes our products look beautiful.
Right.
So whether it's kitchen equipment, it's the sexy tabletop or the flatware, the glassware you're drinking out of, it sucks you in, and it just makes you want to do better and do better for your team and your business,
But circling back to mentorship, Amy, that's such a crucial point of success for people, right? Regardless, in any industry, I think, are the mentors you collect and build along the way, and the mentorship you give as you grow in your career. Does anybody, Nicole, do you have any experiences with mentorship you'd like to talk about?
Sure. Look, we all have unique experiences, right, in terms of our career paths and such. I can tell you the mentoring that I had the opportunity to have, and I think really took advantage of, right? Because there's one thing when someone offers it to you, but to really grasp it and see that as an opportunity to skill build and to have people that care enough to spend time with you. And it was something for me in my 20s, joining the industry at, 23 and having no idea around pricing strategy conversations, how to even take a price increase, how to, do case conversions, how to get an appointment, right? I mean, you're fresh out of school and just not having that real world experience. And it was so critical that there were others at the company that really invested in my success to help me build those skills and to teach me and let me shadow their presentations, right? Invest in my learning and development. So I just feel really fortunate that, early on, I had a lot of exposure and access to that. And also I made sure I took advantage of every last bit of coaching I could get my hands on. And so I think that was critical. And then I think as I moved into different roles in my career, it's always been really important to me to pay that back.
Yeah.
And to help other women in particular, but men too, young men need that support too. And so I think just any chance to be able to offer, mentoring or coaching or allow others to learn through my experiences, I think, it's just a tiny fraction of something I can give back, to the industry. But certainly, yeah, I wouldn't have been able to develop or grow if there weren't others that were willing, to bring me along.
Yeah, and I can double down on Nicole's authenticity there, because when I mentioned that I had 8 interviews, my first interview out of college, Nicole happened to be one of them and continued to mentor me throughout my time at that organization. And we both ended up at different organizations throughout the next 15, 16 years. And although Nicole stayed a mentor of mine, certainly she also connected me with other people because she knew my skill set, she knew my gaps, and she knew really highly intelligent women to say, this person could really help you here, or this person's going to really help you lean into this aspect of where your growth could come from. So I think mentoring goes outside of just who you're connected with at the moment and who we can continue to connect each other with, because maybe I had a gap that Nicole couldn't perfectly fill, but knew someone who could. And those types of micro interactions throughout the last almost 2 decades have absolutely fundamentally changed the leader that I am.
That's amazing. Talk to me a little bit about what to do with that opportunity once you get it. How do you seize it and maximize it to its fullest potential?
I think it's feeling accountable to it. And it goes back to, owning that, right? Because as the mentee, it's not up to the mentor to come up with all the ideas. It really is, I think, having that ownership and creating some discipline around it. Because you're using up someone's valuable time, right? So for me, it was always very important that I didn't waste someone else's time and that I led with the areas that I knew that I needed to develop. So working on your development plan, having a self-awareness, right, of gaps and areas to grow. For example, I'm a marketing and sales background, finance, accounting, that kind of stuff was not my forte. Like that was not what I wanted to do. Yet I knew I needed to get more comfortable with understanding a P&L, understanding, the revenue cost, levers and such. And so that was really good feedback I had gotten. And I knew I needed to close the gap. Right. So I think just making sure that as a mentee, you're not looking for someone else to do the work. It really is a big commitment on their end, but also on your own end. And I think that's just a big thing to go in eyes wide open with what that requires.
I would say I'm a firm believer that I think part of the success that I've been able to see in the industry is when people raise their hand for something they're not perfectly qualified for. I would say that this might be a generalization, but statistics say that women probably wait until they're a bit more qualified. And at that point, there are times where you've waited too long. And how amazingly inspiring it is to see women who are stretching themselves both personally or professionally and learning on the job. And the agility to do that is absolutely within your bandwidth. And so I think that ensuring that you're in the room to ask the questions and to be really intentional about that curiosity is critically important. And part of that being in the room is about getting creative. I was younger in my career and would look on, I would offer to set up a room for a board meeting. I'll get the refreshments or I'll, set up the tech, whatever, just so that I had the opportunity to say, can I sit in on this one? Or looking to see who had declined a meeting on a certain meeting and ask if they wanted me to sit in to take notes. Not to add any particular value to the conversation, but to sponge up as much of the mannerisms and the content and the language that was being used. And certainly outside of my bandwidth at the time in those moments, but it was a very, very good learning of what that's going to look and feel like someday.
That's a great tip. Like, can I just be your ghost man, right? Can I be your stand-in and take notes? You can't be there, but I can relay everything back to someone, and the exposure that you get from just being there and listening. That's a great tip.
You also have to be willing for someone to say no.
That's right.
Because there would be times where that might not be appropriate to sit in on a meeting, but you won't offend someone by asking. And I think it shows initiative or at least curiosity, which we've touched on a bit.
I think too, if you're trying to coach and mentor and help someone else out, what a great way to do it is, to invite them along for the experience, right? And I hope that us all as leaders and that our industry leaders are doing that enough, right? For the 20-something, there's one thing we could do. Are we spending enough time inviting those next generation leaders to get some of that experience and knowledge and just being in the room sometimes, how much you can soak in. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's where, Morgan, you and I were so fortunate that we had leaders at our first company that really made those investments, those little moments that, helped coach us up and then allowed us to take the reins and kind of build off of it. But yeah, I do think it's getting some support or getting someone that you trust in your network that's going to tell you what maybe you're not great at, right? Like, because if we're great at marketing and we're great at sales, we don't probably need to spend as much time in that arena. But what are we not great at? And who do you trust to tell you that and then be able to put some thought around it? The learning never has to stop either, right? I mean, I could definitely take a lesson or two from, the 20-something-year-olds that are going to open my eyes to using technology and using AI and using systems and programs that, like, I have so much I could learn in that arena, right? So I think like that two-way learning street and just taking the approach of as much as I have to give, I probably have to learn. Both things exist, right? And I think some of the peer mentoring, kind of back to the mentoring side of this too, of peer mentoring has been one of the most valuable experiences in my career of just finding someone who's going through the same challenges in their career or in their teams and their companies, and having that safe place to share and get advice or vent or take a problem and then knowing you could give that same, same support back. So peer mentoring, it doesn't always have to be levels. It can really just be someone else that is walking the same path. And, you want that environment outside of your company is great. Someone that, is maybe in non-food, that's doing equipment versus food, and you just get a different perspective. That's very valuable from a learning perspective.
Yeah, I think that two-way street's really important too, Nicole, in that what makes a great mentor and makes them even more approachable to their own mentee is knowing that, listen, none of us have all of the answers. And the answers, even if we had them all, change every day, every month, every year.
Yep.
And so for a mentee to feel comfortable in that space and to feel more inquisitive and allowed to ask the questions that they might not feel immediately comfortable to ask, I think it's important to set that expectation of we're learning from each other. I don't know it all. And there's a skill set that you have that I do not. And so I hope throughout this relationship, however long since 1998 or if it was just been a year, I think it's really important to set that expectation of this is going to be a journey that we're both on together. And so let's create that environment more than teacher-student.
Yeah, that's great. This is awesome. There are organizations within the industry that help foster some of this networking and some of these mentorships. Are you guys active in any of these organizations or?
I was years ago at Sterno and Tablecraft with the Women's Foodservice Forum, which I think is one of the best platforms for women. We have a team at Edward Dunn and Company that does go. I just have not been part of that as of yet. But I think if I could recommend anything as a mentor, like get involved in the Women's Foodservice Forum.
Yeah, it's great advice. And they've got great emerging leader programs. They'll kind of meet you wherever you are in your career. And so I found them super beneficial as well in my 20s and 30s. The one I'm really excited about currently is the Foodservice Women's Alliance, led by Julie Swift. And what's cool about it, I think what makes it unique is that it is a grassroots community. There is no fee and there's no corporate sponsorship required. So it is a group of women who are entirely coming together because of their passion and love for this industry. And they exist truly to just really try to empower women and our ownerships of our careers. So it's a completely free resource. And the more I've gotten to know about their mission and vision, it's just really, really impactful. And I think we're going to continue to see their efforts really bring to life more within our industry and more resources for us to take advantage of. And then again, companies that want to get involved and learn more and be part of their playbook, there's going to be a lot there that continues to come. So I'm super excited about what I'm seeing them do, and them being a collection of really amazing women who just exist to, again, pave it forward, to make it better, to make it easier than it was for us, right? I mean, that's really the goal is we don't want it to be as hard for those in their 20s as it was for us in our 20s, right? I don't want women to have to live through what we all had to live through. And we're not throwing a pity party. That's not the intent. But, that's the reality.
Yeah,
we
when you
want
know
it
better,
to be
do better.
Easier.
Right?
Yeah, we want it to be better and eliminate some of those barriers and challenges that many face. So if you haven't checked them out, this is my shameless plug for Foodservice Women's Alliance.
How do companies go beyond the placards and the statements of what we're trying to do, the vision statements of how to get more inclusive or how to grow our talent, and actually make an impact doing that? What are the tricks and tools and tactics that companies can do to move beyond just the banner?
I actually think it's not about the company platform. I think it's about the people. I think it's about the leaders at the top individually making a commitment that they care enough to spend their time and energy and resources on honoring diversity and at a very macro level, right? So we've seen this whole evolution in this whole wobbly environment, and we won't go deep on what works and what doesn't work. but I think it comes from the commitments of the leaders. Like, it's a people topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, and what I see as an opportunity still, and what I when we think about sponsorship, right? And I'm going to put a call out to the value and the importance of male sponsorship in particular. Wonderful to have women sponsor women, but wow, what an impact when an executive male sponsors and is advocating for a female. And so I think just the power in committing to that, and just the continued sharing of how important that is, and celebrating when we see those great examples of the guys at companies that do that and are showing up in our industry. It's probably the most impactful way. And it doesn't require, a big company platform, big campaign, right? It just requires a commitment and a desire to do the little things and take the small steps, right, to drive it. So I don't know what you guys think on that.
I completely agree. And there's no faster way to build a culture than to see it firsthand at the top, because it trickles its way down. And I think that it encourages others to do what they're seeing, because they're seeing that it's working, and for whatever their reason, mimicking some of those behaviors of the top executives just naturally happens. And it's a lot harder to start from the bottom up when it comes to culture, and when it comes to putting your money where your mouth is on those impact statements. I think of our board chairman, Brian Griffith, and the things he cares about. When you speak with him, you naturally start to care about them, right, because you see how much it means to him, and you see the impact that it can have on an organization, and you start to feel where your impact can lie in that ecosystem, perhaps. So I perfectly agree with the statement that it starts with the people and it starts with the leaders.
I completely agree with both of you. And seeing women in our industry rise to the top and being mentored, whether it's by another woman or by a male figure, has been amazing to see over the last decade or so. Mm-hmm. So it does start with the people. It starts at the top.
Right.
If you could go back and tell your younger self one thing about this industry, what would it be?
I think my younger self was pretty excited to move up as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And at that point, I would have been significantly less excited about a lateral move than I would have been a straight line. And there are moments that I wish that I would have looked at a lateral move as a greater opportunity to get somewhere faster at the end, and taken a more long-range approach, because how unique is it to find someone who has a lens from both operations and sales, or manufacturing and technical R&D work, or the culinary blend. I mean, there's just that holistic hire is sort of the unicorn. And I think that we can get very excited in the lens that we're in to move up in the next promotion. But I think a lateral move is a big win when you're thinking long-term career.
I think when I was in my 20s, I would try to soak in so much feedback that I sort of got lost in it, right? And so such a people pleaser, wanting to do all the things right and probably striving for perfection too much, where I think when I chilled out a little bit, probably had a couple kids and realized, like, chill out. You're not going to, be an A+ at everything. I think I was able to look more objectively at feedback and kind of tie it into, again, my own development, my own goals, and start to recognize that not all feedback is great feedback, right? Don't assume. Like, it's okay to process it and think about it and talk about it. And then, we get to decide, each of us, if it's helpful feedback. I think we went through a bit of an era where we were all over feedbacking everything and everyone. Yes. Yeah. And it just got to be too much. And I think it creates paralysis in people. And so, that's one thing I'm trying to be really eyes wide open of balancing that and giving people the right to disagree with me on feedback, right? I'm an opinion of one.
Right.
And others are opinion of one. So I think that's what I would help myself at, younger age, just to be a little bit more okay with taking it, accepting it, but maybe not having to internalize or try to react to everything.
Love both of your points there. I think more from, just my experience was always a sponge. I wish I could have been more outspoken during those years and given more opinions. If that makes sense, from just, I was always a good listener. I'm still a great listener, open door. But I think if I would have been able to been more open, engaging in a conversation. I always wanted to listen and be a sponge. And I don't think I was
Came out with as much.
right. I didn't engage myself in my, beginning of the career. And I think that was a miss. And that's one thing I always, like to say, to the team, like, ask questions, be a sponge, 100% be a sponge, but also ask questions. Don't sit in silence. Don't suffer in silence.
Right.
And I think that's, if I could go back and change something, I think, not that I suffered, but I just, I was too busy like soaking it up than, getting more engaged with the conversation.
In thinking through career defining moments, one of mine that I've probably told this story ad nauseum, but years ago I had a performance review and I was so confident. In fact, my leader at the time is sitting at this very table. And I was so overly confident that I would be far exceeding expectations that I intentionally scheduled the review on my own birthday. And I thought, what better reason to continue the celebration with this great review? Because I had been so busy that year and I had risen my hand for so many things. And I was just really excited for this review. And to my surprise, my leader, Nicole, at the time had shared with me that you are indeed not exceeding expectations solely because you've been very busy. That's not exceeding expectations. Or solely because you've risen your hand for many things. That's not exceeding expectations. What better looks like is you're raising your hand for the things that you can add a great deal of value to. And you're also selective enough to say no to the things that are going to pull you away from something you probably should be spending your time on. And that being busy isn't a sign of being highly successful. Being busy is a sign of perhaps you need to prioritize differently, or perhaps you need to learn to do things more efficiently. And this conversation shaped the next 8, 9, 10 years for me, knowing that it's okay to say no to things. And it's also incredibly important to know the value that you're going to bring something or receive from something when you're signing yourself up for roles outside of your specific function. And also that being efficient in your work and appropriately managing your time, like these are all skill sets that allow you to be successful in the real work that you're doing. And that was a very, very career defining moment for me because it taught me that frantic work isn't going to meet a strategic account plan at the end of the year. You're firefighting every single day. You look back 365 days, what all has been accomplished. It's more difficult to measure that than it is to be super, super intentional about the goals you're working toward. So thanks for that, Nicole.
I hope I didn't ruin your birthday.
Right.
When Morgan had shared that, I mean, that, talking about, feeling, just I'm like, oh gosh. But truly, I think Morgan has been such a joy in my career to be able to watch what she's capable of. And because I care so darn much, I knew that I needed to give her those moments of reality and those moments of what it takes. And so love that it meant something to you, but not easy to do that, right? It's not easy to mentor and coach and provide guidance, especially when you really, really care and you want it to stick and you want it to help kind of redirect, right? So,
but what a gift it is to get some feedback.
It also taught me that every next role, your expectation is going to be significantly higher. And I think that came up in the review as well. In that if this was the year you had last year, this might be a different conversation. But you're in a new role, your expectations are significantly higher. The bar is raised every single year, as it should be, and your internal bar should be raised every single year. So it was, again, thinking through year after year, that bar being risen is certainly stayed in the back of my mind.
My first 2 companies, I had great teams, great mentors, great leaders, and then the people that worked under me. To this day, I'm still very close with. And the feedback they've given me of positive feedback as a mentor, as a leader of the team. Coming to the role I'm at now, I walked into a team that had been there for decades together. I had a gentleman, 50 years. So I walked into a team that was bonded. From the minute I walked in, it was a struggle to understand 13 different personalities, to understand how each person works. So if that was, for me, a career-defining moment over a course of a handful of years, understanding how to manage a team that's been so tight, and I'm the newbie. I was fortunate enough to have a great boss that mentored me through it. I, at that point, had never managed 13 people. Usually it was, just a handful. So for me, that was very defining on like, how do I want to come across as a leader, making sure that we're on point, we're on strategy, and making sure that these folks that have been here for so long weren't going to, I had in my first strategy meeting with them, I finished going through all the initiatives, all the planning. She looked at me, she said, yeah, we're not doing any of that. So I walked out of that meeting, and I'm, if anyone who knows me, I take a moment to process before I speak. Walked out of the meeting, called her in my office and said, you know what? We will be doing every one of these initiatives. And I said, you will also make sure that the folks that report to you will be doing these initiatives. And I said, because of that comment, we're going to be doing this meeting again. So for me, it took me completely out of my comfort zone.
So International Women's Day is in March, and it's often celebrated, and there's a lot of social media posting and a lot of banner waving, I'll say, in March. But how do we keep that parade going all year round?
I think, Mindy, it might be easier than you might think in that, sure, March is an exciting month with lots of celebrations, and many companies do big things. And it's a fun celebration. But throughout the year, I think that perhaps we don't check in with people as much as we should. And when I mean check in, not how's the business going or give me a sales report or customer log, but how are you? Are you happy? When's the last time that you were asked that question at work? And those types of questions, particularly with women, I think resonate strongly and increase engagement. And it also changes the conversation from a check-in and a check the box to really understanding what's driving someone's motivation and what is making them happy and what might be making them unhappy. And it's important not only from a human connectivity perspective, but from a retention perspective. I think that too many times people leave companies because no one asked them if they were happy.
I don't look at it as anyone else's responsibility except the leader. And if you're a leader who cares about making an impact for other women and to help progress, right, make things better, then I think it's easy to sit down and create a quick list of ways you can do that. Like, what are the small things that can happen? And it's the conversations that Morgan referenced. It's looking at the high potential females in the organization and, reaching out, like spending the time, setting the time, putting it in a calendar, getting, just making the effort. Like, let's not overcomplicate it, right? It's making the effort. It's, if you're traveling and you go to one of your corporate locations or one of your plants, I love to go in the lunchroom at one of our manufacturing sites and sit with the ladies' table. Like, it's wonderful, and get to know what their day's been like and what is their favorite food that we make and how long have they been with us. And, just having that simple conversation, just showing up. So I think those are year-round, daily, weekly, monthly things. In addition to what we talked about with mentoring, find someone to mentor, find someone to sponsor, find someone to call on your commute and check in on them. I mean, those are the little things that make it, not an event, right?
I absolutely agree. It comes from us as leaders, reaching out to the other ladies, the other leaders. There's, people within your organization that they want to go to lunch. And if you don't make the effort, what's the saying? Like, you've got to make the effort to give and take, right? Some people sit quiet, again, maybe want to do stuff but are afraid to ask. And it's being, strong enough to have your voice heard to say, hey, let's get a ladies' luncheon together. Or let's get part of a quarterly or monthly, could be a luncheon or just chat time, sit in the cafeteria and chat for an hour, bring in a treat. So we've done that in the past. It's keeping the consistency. I think that really really shows a statement. But I love everything that you both said.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I am so inspired by the conversation that we've had and look forward to taking notes back on just maybe celebrating my own journey a little bit, but more importantly, things we can do to give back to the community and grow as an industry collectively for women, for men, for those joining us, and how we can foster this new future together. So thank you all so much for being here.
Yeah, and just a big shout out to the Affinity Group and Food Mix for picking this as a topic and bringing it forward and, asking us to be part of it. So,
Yes, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Go girls!
Woohoo!
As we come out of this episode, we want to remind our listeners to pick an opportunity to mentor someone, nominate a woman for a food service award, follow an organization promoting women in food service, and most importantly, share this episode with your friends.
You've been listening to Bridge to Local with Affinity Group, where manufacturers and local operators connect for success. Stay tuned for more insights and visit affinitysales.com to see how we can help drive your business forward. See you next time.